Hi, I'm Kathy King, registered dietitian and founder of Helm Publishing. We produce nutrition-related continuing education that is book-based, and one of our most popular programs is Intuitive Eating. And we're very lucky today to have one of the authors of Intuitive Eating, Evelyn Tribole. Evelyn, thank you for being with us.
I'm thrilled to be here.
I will read, if you don't mind, the highlights of your bio because
Oh,
it was very extensive, and so I'd like to let
okay.
you know your background. Evelyn is a dietitian and certified eating disorder specialist. She has authored 10 books. We've been working together 20 or 25.
Oh my God, it's been a long time, huh? It's been a very good relationship, let me add.
Oh, thank you. Same here. Evelyn is an international speaker, popular media guest, and was a nutrition expert for Good Morning America and a media spokesperson for the Academy for 6 years. The media often seeks Evelyn out for her expertise, including the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Atlantic, Vogue, and People magazines. It is interesting to note that Evelyn qualified for the first Olympics women's marathon in 1984, but now is an avid hiker, surfer, and ping pong player. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. And let me start by having you briefly remind viewers, what is intuitive eating?
So intuitive eating is an evidence-based framework that we developed almost over 30 years ago with 10 principles to help alleviate the suffering that people encounter as a result of seeking weight loss and food plans and all kinds of things. And so basically it's about reconnecting and trusting your body, listening to the message of it and responding in a timely manner.
Okay. It's so important that people understand that because there are misconceptions. I understand that there are many studies now that prove that intuitive eating is very effective. Could you please enlighten us and let us know what those studies say?
Yeah, it's actually so exciting because, when we talked earlier, I mentioned how intuitive eating was, evidence inspired. And now we have nearly 200 studies on our work showing benefits in a wide diversity. For example, there was a series of studies, a systematic analysis looking at the nutrition quality, the diet quality of people who are intuitive eaters, because there have been concerns by, oh my gosh, if you let people eat what they want to, it's going to be one big old free for all. And actually, that's not what the research shows. It shows that actually, when people embark on intuitive eating, it either improves their nutrition quality or it stays the same, which I think is really, really fantastic news. In other words, it's not disrupting, health, especially if that's something that you are achieving. I love that study. Then a really important study came out a couple of years ago. It was a meta-analysis looking at over 90 studies on the psychological correlates of intuitive eating. And it's probably one of the strongest suits of intuitive eating is what ends up happening as a result of that. So it's improved body image, better mood, better self-esteem, increased well-being, decreased eating disorders, more connection to the body, less binge eating, and so forth. And so I think it's this kind of research that just actually triggers even more studies in terms of what can we do to help improve the quality of people's lives, which includes their minds as well. And so there's been also studies looking at blood sugar regulation, looking at blood lipids and showing improvement in those areas as well. So it's really, really rather exciting.
That is exciting. We know that there's studies that are being done overseas.
Yeah. What are they looking into? Why are they doing
What are
this?
they looking into? What is it that aligns with what Americans are looking into? And are there similar problems?
Yeah. So what actually a lot of the studies that are being done internationally is taking the intuitive eating assessment scale, which actually validates intuitive eating, showing that there's improvements in what the traits are. And I think it's been now translated and validated in 11 different languages. So that's one of the things that they're seeing. And yeah, they're seeing problems, especially when you start looking at eating disorders and disordered eating, we're seeing that everywhere, sadly so. And, what's happening now because of diet culture is the pursuit of dieting by any way that you want to in terms of fasting, eliminating carbs, all those kinds of things ends up really wreaking havoc. And so people are looking at what can we be doing to increase the well-being of of our populations and so forth.
That brings me to an idea of what age group are we talking about here? Is it the whole expanse from childhood on up, or?
It really is. It really is. And it's profound. In fact, we can even say that, baby-led weaning, which is about when you're transitioning from, breast milk or whatever liquids to solids, it is a way in which the baby leads the show. So it's basically like intuitive eating at the baby level. And when parents see that, it's incredibly affirming that, wow, babies know how to self-regulate. Imagine that. And a lot of the principles from intuitive eating are based on some child developmental research. So yeah, it's across the board. I've worked with women, in their 70s and 80s who thought that at some point they were going to let go of dieting, and they haven't, and in part because the culture keeps getting more toxic. So it's never too late to reconnect with your body.
Okay. Counselors and many different professions around the world seem to be interested in intuitive eating. What do you think is attracting them to this philosophy?
Oh, it is an international phenomenon, because we're in over 40 countries. We have over 2,000 certified intuitive eating counselors spanning a variety of professions, and people are really struggling. And what I've really seen, especially with people in the the dietetics profession as nutritionists or whatever roles they're playing, I've worked with a lot of dietitians who are thinking actually about giving up their careers because they were just very unhappy working in this weight-centric model. And then they hear or learn about intuitive eating from a variety of ways, and they find that their lives change, and then they start working with their patients in this model. And it's so gratifying to be a facilitator and a witness to this, because it really is life-changing. But it changes the practitioners' lives. My life has changed, as a result of this. So those are some of the things that I'm seeing, is that the traditional methods have not been working, and we are in this place of a huge paradigm shift. And I think one of the biggest things I hear from health professionals, and in terms of why have they got into intuitive eating, is because their life's changed so much by it, and they want to help other people do the same.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are some of the myths that you hear? And as a practitioner, I've heard them for a lot of years on some of the myths having to do.
Yeah. I think what happens is it's kind of like unfortunately the byproduct of when something gets kind of popular, it can be misunderstood. So sometimes, the myth is that this is the hunger fullness diet, and no, it's not. There aren't really any absolutes in intuitive eating. They're guidelines, they're principles. It's not a big deal if you eat when you're not hungry. Our body is kind of amazing in terms of what it will do in terms of regulating our intake and so forth. And so it's a very simplistic and reductionist way to look at intuitive eating. And one of the ways I like to say is that we have 10 principles. There's so much more to that, and it also includes, the pleasure of eating, which is about, aiming for satisfaction. Another myth I kind of alluded to is that, if people are, quote, allowed to eat whatever they want to, it's going to end up in a free-for-all and a food feast. And I hear this from critics who are not actually really familiar with our work. They read one principle and they don't understand the psychological and the research basis in terms of how this actually works. And what ends up happening, and then what you see all these pictures posted with colorful donuts and cupcakes. So there is that perception. But what ends up happening is the excitement is no longer there. So the bottom line is there's a balance that ends up happening over time when you realize you can have whatever food that you want to, and you stay connected with your body. You're the boss,
Boss. Yeah.
Yeah.
When people accept the intuitive eating paradigm as a patient and they start feeling good about themselves, what can you expect? What changes in those people?
There is so much that changes. And first of all, when you think about just the amount of brain space it occupies when you're worrying about your eating and you're worrying about your body, it's this cultural neuroses that has happened. So now this is all freed up. And then there's this ease that happens with eating. I've had so many patients say, my friends and family are saying, what has changed with you? There's something, it's really rather nice. And what it is the anxiety is not exuding out, or the preoccupation isn't there anymore. And so one of the things I think that really happens is that they start rebuilding this trust with themselves and their body. And this trust then spills over into other areas in their life. And we talked, in our first interview about interoceptive awareness, which is our ability to perceive physical sensations that arise within the body. And that also includes emotions. So as we get connected with these valuable messages, it amplifies the trust even more so.
I can see that.
Yeah. And there's one other thing I just forgot I want to mention. There's another myth I forgot to mention that's really important, that intuitive eating is not about the pursuit of changing your body or weight loss. And anyone who is offering in that way is really using our model in a way that was not intended and can really create harm.
Okay. So you're not expecting weight loss to happen?
We're not, exactly. One of the things we like to say is one of three things will happen from a body standpoint. Your body can stay the same size, the size can go up, the size can go down. The purpose of intuitive eating is cultivating a healthy relationship with food, mind, and body.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask then, would you explain health at every size? Would you explain to people what that means?
Yeah, health at every size is a social justice framework, and it's housed under the organization of the Association for Size, Diversity, and Health. And it's a social justice issue for people of all size bodies to be able to access healthcare and get a proper medical evaluation. If someone has a sprained ankle, they don't want to hear a lecture from the doctor. You just lose weight and you won't have any pain. They want to get the x-ray and get the evaluation and so on. And it's also, they have just modified the guidelines. I haven't had a chance to get into the details of those, but they're really looking at ways of really removing the anti-fatness that we see in so much policy and in public health discourse and so on. It's actually very exciting, all the changes that are happening. And so what we'd like to say is intuitive eating is very much aligned with this framework.
What would you say to practitioners, dietitians, and physicians? What would you say to practitioners about when they have this conversation with people?
Well, the problem is when there's a weight-focused conversation, a lot of people don't want to go back and see their doctors. It's perpetuating weight stigma. It's a huge problem. And it's not, a lot of people have this misunderstanding that, oh, it's just about, speaking nicely and politely to somebody in a larger body. It's like, no, it's about getting a standard of care that you would give to somebody in a smaller body. It's about having a blood pressure cuff that fits you. It's about having chairs that you can fit into and so forth. And so one of the things I say to doctors is, what do you think the impact is on a person's health if they don't see a doctor because they don't want to get weighed and they don't want to have the lecture and so on. And when you start looking at all the research on the pursuit of weight loss through, quote, lifestyle dieting, it's really problematic. It's not sustainable. It predicts actually more weight gain, perpetuates eating disorders, weight stigma. It's really problematic. And we have a lot of work to be doing in that regard.
I would agree with that. If a person wants more information on intuitive eating, before they jump in with both feet, maybe just one foot, what would you say how would they understand what intuitive eating is and part of the process?
Yeah, I guess it depends how deep they want to go. I mean, you can certainly start with the website. I always like to start with free resources. So looking at the website, Elise and I have done a lot of podcasts. And if you were to Google intuitive eating podcast and one of our names, you'll get something out of there that kind of gives you a sense of that. I did a guide on Instagram on a 10-day process of exploring the principles of intuitive eating with videos and prompts. And I think that gives you an idea of the process and what it's like. There's also a lot of research that's out there. In fact, on our website, we have a downloadable PDF with all the citations that are there. And if, of course, I'd recommend, reading the book or the workbook and so forth.
Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch are the two authors, but how do they get a hold of you and what is the website?
Yeah, so there's a couple of websites. There's intuitiveeating.org. That's where I would start. And then also Elise and I have our individual websites, and it's basically our names.com. So eliseresch.com and evelyntribole.com. And we have a lot of information there and the best way to contact us.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. This has been wonderful. We've learned so much, and I think that people will really enjoy hearing more about this in the greater detail, because I think there are a lot of misconceptions out there.
Yeah, there
For
are.
people, for people who want to hear it, we have it that they're posted on YouTube, and you can certainly look at them all under their names and Helm Publishing. Thank you all, and good health.